Hi, everyone. Welcome to our podcast. I am Kelly Birmingham. This is a 25-year look back across the spectrum, and I'm with my usual partner in crime, Jen Lucero, mom to Dylan and Ethan. Hi, Jen.
Hey, Kelly.
Hey, introduce our very special guest today.
Well, yeah, I'm excited to have back my youngest son, Ethan Jones. He was on our podcast early on when we first started, and he started his senior year of college today. And so we wanted to get kind of update and perspective on for Ethan being away, but also some thoughts of being a brother to Dylan. Hi, Ethan.
How's it going?
Thanks for joining us. Tell us where you are.
I am in a parking lot because I just moved into a house and we don't have our Wi-Fi yet. So had to drive service.
So you're in Monterey Bay?
Yeah, I go to school at Cal State Monterey Bay. So I'm living in Marina right now, which is like 7 hours from home-ish in Orange County.
Yeah, I just figured out yesterday because I had like memories popping up that it was a year ago this past weekend that Craig and I took you out to live up there. I can't believe it's already been a year. And
Wow.
As usual, how much happens within a year in our lives, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But that was a great trip, and I'm just so proud of you of everything that you've accomplished in like this last year. And I really feel like this was like the best move for you possible, even though I missed having you here.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I love it up here. It was good to get out of the heat too, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ethan, this year while you've been gone, we know that Dylan has had a number of significant health problems, right, Jen?
Yeah. So I know that's probably tough on you. Like, there's been actually with our whole family, there's been some medical stuff, and it's really tough for me because I know how vested you are and how much you love grandparents and Dylan. And so I'm sure it's kind of hard. I try to, of course, shield things. I like make sure the timing of when I tell you and don't tell you things. But I know you want to be aware, and I know you get mad at me if I don't tell you in a timely manner.
I want to know what's going on with my family, man.
But yeah, I mean, what is it like for you, like just being away? I mean, tell us the good and the bad as far as, living when you were growing up and living with Dylan as opposed to now, being away, but also, is there pressure on missing out on certain things?
I think a lot of the time, like when you look back on the past, it's pretty easy to romanticize like whatever was going on. So when I look back on like being home, especially over COVID, the way I remember Dylan now is a lot different than the way I thought about Dylan sometimes growing up. If that makes sense. Like Dylan, when I was living at home, I mean, like, to be totally candid, he gets kind of annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Like just all the constant like yelling and all that. But I mean, I obviously still loved him, but now that I'm up here and I'm not around it so much when I'm home, it's like almost charming to have him like being Dylan and being all goofy. But it does suck, like it kind of feels like I never know what's going on. Like there's a disconnect, and I do get mad when you don't tell me what's going on, for sure. So it's kind of just this like walking this tightrope of trying to stay connected, but also trying to have like the best picture of back home as I can, because I want to come home, and I want to have a great time when I'm home. So just trying to figure out like the best way to go about dealing with when like whatever's happening, like Dylan or other family members. I'm also young, so it's kind of just I'm figuring life out in general right now. It's like the beginning of this year very much feels like the start of like a transition phase.
Mhm.
So that kind of plays in with everything, just like especially with family. But like I said, it's pretty easy to think about Dylan like in this super positive way, and I miss him a lot. Whereas back home, I was kind of like, oh my God, I can't wait to leave sometime.
I think that's natural though. You know,
Yeah,
and one thing I appreciate that you totally got and seemed as fired up as like Kelly and I were was, you know, when he aged out, you know, of the transition program, and we had so many, you know, high expectations and stuff. And to think that, you know, he's still downstairs, like, you know, working remotely, like it's just crazy, you know.
yeah,
And I
that's,
know that you've been fired up about that, which is awesome because it's like, it proves to me that you totally get it. Like all you've ever known is having Dylan, you know, you're younger. So all you've ever known is like having autism in the house, right? But I know you get it of like how important it is for Dylan and everybody involved that he is like in the right situation for his future.
yeah. I mean, it's pretty comparable to just like every other person. Like when you're that, we're pretty close in age. He's 22 right now. So he's like also in that kind of early 20s transition phase. It's just you have to go about it in a different way. Like I'm gonna graduate college and either go to grad school or get a job or whatever. And he finished his transition program and he should be like at a day program or doing something like that. But it's just like, I don't know, it's kind of ridiculous, I think. When I still think about how he's doing like Zoom for his day program, it honestly kind of pisses me off because Dylan, like, and any other person deserves to have something to do, like that's real. Not that like I don't know. It's good that he has something. It's better than nothing for sure, but it's definitely not ideal that it's online. Yeah, I don't know. He'll be fine. We know Dylan. He showed like I think growing up we were kind of, or at least I was a lot more worried about what was going to happen. Kind of when he got older and he aged out of school and all that. And he's honestly mellowed out a lot. And he showed us a lot over COVID how like adaptable he actually was. Like
Mhm.
he
Yeah.
did a lot better than I would have expected him to do in a situation like that. He honestly might have adapted better than like me and a lot of my friends because
Mhm.
it was hard. It was a hard time for everybody. And for him to be able to overcome like that with his like special situation was definitely really cool. And it made me worry a lot less about like what's going to happen in 20 years or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, you should be in person, I
Yeah,
think.
it's bullshit. You know, Ethan, you said something when we were talking earlier about the kind of people you pick as friends in general. And I wanted to hear a little bit about that. You know, Bill and I last night went out with Melanie, who's on the spectrum. She's right in the middle, moderate. And we went to a restaurant. We sat at the bar because we were going to a movie. And this particular bartender, like sometimes we are always trying to figure out like how much do we talk for Melanie or not, because depending on how people respond to her, because you know, if they ask her what she wants, she might delay her response. She's processing, she might sort of misstep her words. And you know, Bill as her dad is always trying to balance, like, you know, am I going to step in and support her, or am I going to back off and give her the chance? And we do it based on how we think people are going to treat her, frankly. And this bartender, this woman, was amazing to her and waited and like looked her in the eye and just like really attended to her. And when that happens, Melanie, now she lights up, she looks at the person, she starts talking back, and she has a great conversation. And at the same bar, In walks this young older man, probably 40, 50, with Down syndrome. He sits down at the bar. She greets him. He orders French fries and a bourbon and water. And she gives it to him. And she's like, this is one of my regulars. And then someone else walked in and sat next to him. And all of a sudden, there were all these people like with some special needs. And then other people mixed in that were talking with them. And Bill and I are in tears looking around this bar going, this is one of the most incredible experiences we've ever had. It was so mutually inclusive of everyone there. And it just really struck me. You said something about that. I wanted you to talk about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the way I put it was I do my best to pick my friends, or like not even just friends, but just the people I'm around, as like people who treat everyone well, regardless of, I mean, like, obviously I want them to treat Dylan well and other people with special needs, but not even just that, just people in general. Like, I think everyone knows how terrible it feels like when someone treats you bad. So for people to be able to treat other people bad, like, I know that I just don't necessarily want to spend much time with you. Like, keep you at arm's length type of thing, at least. So it's kind of just like, it's pretty awesome for me, especially now, like being at college. Pretty much everyone I've taken home has been super cool to Dylan. And I remember in high school, there were like the handful of people I would bring over who, you know, I kind of give them a preface, like before anyone comes over, like, just so you know, like, this is Dylan, this is what he's like. He probably won't answer when you talk to him. He probably won't look you in the eye. Like, he might be loud, he might be kind of obnoxious, but like, he's going to be there. So like, just be ready. And people, I've seen a pretty wide array of how people respond to it. And there's definitely a side that I prefer, which in high school, a lot of people would come over and I'd tell them all that before we went in or whatever. And we'd go in and they'd just ignore him because they're like, oh, he's not going to answer me anyways. Just like totally ignore him, like whatever. But as I've gotten older, and I feel like I've gotten better at picking friends in general, every person I bring over, like, we'll talk to him. Like, they don't care. Like, they know that he might not respond. I've told them, but they'll still talk to him. They'll wait. They'll give him time. If he wants to answer, he'll answer. If he doesn't want to talk, he doesn't talk. And no one puts that pressure on him. And just to see like the people that I'm spending time with, like, acknowledge him as a person, because like that's what it really is, like talking to somebody, whether they answer or not, like they're a person. So I don't know, I'm always pretty stoked when I bring a friend over and they're super cool to Dylan. And like my buddy Sam, we just went down south a couple weeks ago and I told him all that, like, probably won't answer, whatever. And he, like, every time we'd walk in the house, we were there for 6 days. Every time we'd go in the house and Dylan was in there, he'd try and have a conversation with him, or he'd talk to him about like VHS or whatever it is, something that Dylan's into that Sam also shares an interest in, even though it's like in a very different way. But just like building those connections is the most like human thing you can do, really. So to see people like treat Dylan like that is awesome, because although it should be normal, it's like not necessarily something you can expect from everybody, to just like be cool and, yeah, I don't know, not be a dick, kind of.
I kind of feel like, you know, obviously you have friends even from, you know, from around here forever, that have just known Dylan since they were little. And obviously they're super cool with him and use that. But I think in general, I might be wrong, but it just seems like whether people are being, you know, more aware, better educated, you know, just more accepting. It just seems like in general, definitely, I mean, your circle is always really great with Dylan. I mean, even things like, and Dylan gets so excited, like when you come home, especially when you bring people, like every time you're home, it's like, the house is full, and he loves that, but even when we're out sometimes and we see your friends when you're not even here, like we ran into Chris, who you've known since elementary school. And I mean, he made a point to totally like, hey, Dylan, and talk to him. And Dylan got all excited. So it's kind of cool because like you indirectly, like, by being Dylan's brother and advocate, have kind of, brought in, I feel like, other people's perspective and like knowledge and acceptance. I mean, I just think I remember, probably you too, Kelly. I mean, I know you love to call me a boomer, Ethan, but yeah, obviously I'm much older than you. But I think about when I was in high school and I never even saw people with special needs. I think they either weren't even on campus or they had them hidden out in like a different area. Like, I mean, and to think now of like, I know the only time you guys went to school together was high school, but to think of how different, it was, and they tried to, really do stuff and include them is awesome. I mean, do you remember that, Kelly? Were you the same experience?
I did. And actually the reason I'm in the field that I'm in, like I've always, out of grad school, started immediately working with folks with developmental disabilities is because my mother, she was a director of a preschool and she was known in our town for being an inclusive preschool because all the kids were hidden. I don't know where they were. And my mom would say, you are all welcome. And my sister and I volunteered. And my mom actually, there is a cerebral palsy center and 2 towns over. And my mother, I'm going to say made, because she did make me at first, made my sister and I volunteer there. They had folks, it was like they had folks with different developmental disabilities, cerebral palsy, some autism. And I wouldn't have known that there were people like that. And I'm saying those words because that was the sentiment back then. Had my mother not had my sister and I go and volunteer there. And so she's really the reason I had any clue what was happening because they weren't around.
That's definitely the case. So speaking of Ethan, so you were kind of like thrown into volunteering from a very early age.
Yep.
For me and a lot of autism related programs and stuff. I appreciate that, and I think it really helped shape you. But I think for me, the most exciting part is how like it started with Dylan, but you then were there as literally a toddler, but then now it's your thing. And I think it really helped influence you with the surfing. How do you feel about that? I mean, my big thing when you were little was I never wanted you to feel like you're just on the sidelines. Like I wanted you to feel like you're a part of everything. Is that something that you think worked well? Like, do you encourage that for parents, for like service providers? I mean, even in some of Dylan's therapies, we tried to have you involved. Like, what's your thoughts on that kind of reflecting back?
Well, I think you have to involve everybody, honestly. Like, I'm so grateful that like when I look back on childhood and I think of all those experiences I had volunteering with you, Kelly, whoever it was, when I think back on that, like, I don't know, being in college right now, I like have noticed so much how much of a product of your environment everyone is, whether you be from the Central Valley or Orange County or Northern California or different states, whatever. Like you can pretty much tell like how people grew up, I think, and how accepting they are of others and all that. And I mean, I like to think that I'm pretty accepting of others and I like to do good for other people. So, and like that came from being a kid. And like you said earlier, Dylan is older than me, so he's always been around. And I remember as a kid, like thinking that was the norm, basically, was
Mhm.
Dylan was, I didn't know Dylan had autism, or I didn't know. I didn't know anything. He was just Dylan. He was my brother. And um, I still remember like the first time you told me that Dylan was like, I think you told me he was different or something. I was young, so I don't
You're
remember.
little.
I was just gonna
Yeah.
ask, how
He
old?
started asking questions. I remember we were in the car and like all of a sudden it was like random questions. You were so young, but you were always so smart and like above your years. And
Yep.
I remember you were like literally like 5 or something, and you're like, it would be things would dawn on you though, and you'd be like, because when he used to get really mad in the car and stuff and
Mhm.
scream
I
at lights,
remember.
and you all of a sudden you'd be like, Mom, I don't think Dylan should ever drive a car. Like, he'd be like Mr. Toad, or you'd just be all of a sudden like, is Dylan going to be able to go to school, or is he ever going to get married? But you're asking these questions when you're like so young. Is he going to be able to live at home? Like, it was just like you could tell all these questions are like circling in your head, and you're probably trying to figure out what was going on, which I think we all were like
Right.
at that point. Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting because it's hard to put in perspective. And one thing I always found interesting with Dylan is like, I always, and we talked about this, we hate when people don't tell someone either that they're on the spectrum, or don't
Mhm.
tell the siblings. Remember we were in that sim shop and
Yep.
like the other kids had no idea
No
what
idea.
autism
Mhm.
was. Like, hello.
Yep.
But I remember, it just seems like I remember Dylan's reference and about autism was the walk and the Anaheim walk, and he would say it's Dylan's walk. And
The
it's like
autism
he
speaks walk.
literally thought
Mhm.
everybody was there, for him, which is kind of cool. And
Mhm.
I fill out all these things for Dylan, but it's always these weird questions like, do you think Dylan feels depressed or like sad about autism or who he is? And I always think like Dylan thinks he's like the greatest thing ever. Like everybody else is, the problem, right? I mean,
Melanie's like that too. Melanie
yeah,
is very happy in her life and thinks everyone else has a problem. Mhm.
yeah. So I don't know. I'm just, I'm happy you feel that way. I'm happy that
So
because we're all just trying to figure it out, right?
So
Still
it
are.
sounds like as soon as Ethan started questions, Jen, that I remember actually you doing this, you told him, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Ethan, you think that was a good decision?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it was probably good to let me kind of be like, what the hell is going on? Like,
Yep.
put out some
Mhm.
feelers first. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's the kind of thing you would want to just, I mean, I'm not a parent, so it's
Like
hard.
I'm a 5-year-old.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the kind of thing like dump on a child. Just be like, hey, by the way, like all this, like that would definitely be overwhelming. And it probably was overwhelming, even though I was asking. But I think it probably would be good to, or it probably was good that you let me kind of be like, what's going on here before you just told me. But I do appreciate a lot that you did tell me. I still kind of honestly like that's one of my earliest memories was you telling me like that um Dylan was special or had special needs. After it was like if I remember it, I mean I was so young that my memory could be way off, but I remember kind of like I started going to preschool and I was like, hey, no one here is like Dylan. Like everyone's
Mhm.
like me. This is
Yeah.
weird. Like where's Dylan, the Dylan type people? And I got home and I was like, no one's like Dylan. And my mom was like, oh yeah, he's like got autism, blah blah, whatever. And I remember being like, what the hell? Like
Mhm.
what is autism? What do you mean? Like can I get it? You have so many questions as a 5-year-old. You don't know what's going on. But I am grateful like how upfront and honest with me you have been throughout my whole life about it. Like you tell me the truth about if he's how he's doing in school or he's doing with his aggression, like all that, which I like to hear because it's a lot easier to worry when you feel like you don't know what's going on so much. But when you feel like you're getting updated, it feels like you have to worry less, which is good. Because I do worry about Dylan. Like, I don't know, he lives a hard life, kind of, in a lot of aspects. So knowing that I have that kind of connectedness of at least someone's telling me what's going on is very reassuring for me.
That listening to you guys talk is like, oh my gosh, you must be a proud mom, Jen. I mean, Ethan,
Absolutely.
you're a pretty incredible, special young man.
I always say through all the crap, right, that we've been through, like Ethan, you're the one thing I genuinely feel like I've done right or right by, I guess, I've tried. When you're talking about being around people, I think one thing that helped during that time too is that we did have, like, you had your own thing, right? This is the same time you started like Pony League Baseball and you're doing your stuff. Sorry, there's like noise outside. But also, like, we were at that time really hanging around like Hope and her family and Aries. So you also,
which are families who have other children with
autism.
autism.
And he was older. So he was, 7 years older than Dylan, 9 years older than you. So you could kind of see, like, later on, like, someone, and watch him evolve. And then, of course, Surfers Healing, where I think when you would talk about like being around like just a range of people and like acceptance and like, just seeing everybody and anything, and anything goes there. And, a kid can come and pour a bucket of sand on your head and no one's going to flinch. So hopefully all those experiences, like, kind of helped you get through it, right?
Yeah, I mean, part of the product of your environment thing is like, I think while I kind of have grown out of the Orange County lifestyle, I think it was a great place to grow up. Like, there's just so many people there that you have to figure out like how to communicate properly, because there's always different people around you. Like, we don't even know all of our neighbors really. So you learn to adapt so well, like with new people. And then also like being at the Surfers Healing and like all that kind of stuff is like, you run into so many different types of people there too. Like, even the spectrum is so broad too, that one kid gets put on a board and is super chill, like talking, laughing, having a good time, and then the next kid is huge and angry and doesn't want to do it. That's I think being around so many people when I was young was honestly like really good for me, and I think it'd be good for everybody to figure out how to properly communicate with people and understand people that aren't from your same small town who you've grown up with since you were 2 or whatever it is.
I have so many good sound bites. You've said some cool things. I actually remember being at the Malibu Surfers Healing. It was, I think, their second year, maybe first year it ever started. Ethan, you were like 4. And Dylan was 5 or 6, and Jen, you were there. I was there. We were volunteering. And then to just know that like you grew up going to Surfers Healing and then started being a volunteer and going to the camp. And then we just did a podcast with Izzy talking about like when, like, we all remember when Surfers Healing got started, like what a cool experience we've all had with that.
Yeah, I think Surfers Healing honestly has done like just as much for me as it has for Dylan. Like, I grew up going to Paskowitz Surf Camp, and last summer I was a counselor at the camp. And I'm hoping to continue doing that. I got to talk to Izzy, but I hope so.
Jen and I are supposed to have coffee with him soon, so we'll talk.
Well, and he loves you.
Yeah, he does love you.
Fingal. That's his name for Ethan?
What is it?
Yeah. Bingle.
Bingle.
But yeah, it's done so much for me, and that's awesome. Like for siblings to be able to, it was great to have separate stuff. Like I think any sibling, like you need separate stuff. You can't be constantly intermingling. But to have that as something we shared, and now it's something that we still share. Like I grew up and really got into surfing on my own, and then going to work for Surface Healing was like for Paskowitz, and then I did my first Surface Healing, the 2021 San Diego one was my first Surface Healing as a surfer, which is awesome. Like I still think, honestly, that's another like super fond memory I have of as a kid is being 10 or 11 or whatever and going to Paskowitz and meeting all these other kids my age who are, I mean, you got to be kind of grimy to be at Paskowitz surf camp. So to meet kids that I like shared a bunch of interests with and were from all different places, it was awesome. And it's still something that I think about a lot.
Well, what was cool was, and some people thought I was crazy, but I really trusted Izzy and all those people, that really it would, at that point, it was totally about you. Like I was sending you down there for like every summer for a week, starting at 10 years old by yourself.
Yep.
And just dropping you off and knowing that, they were going to take care of you. But it was like for you, it was your thing. It was completely at that point separate from Dylan, and I think, like you said, you got to meet, I mean, obviously it wasn't just people on the spectrum, but you got to meet people from all over the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, talk about diversity. I mean, people were coming from all over to come to this. And I'm sure that just really brought in like a lot of, life perspective for you. And I kind of like that because, we've had our bougie, like when you're young, vacations. And I always kind of try to balance it and teach you reality of, not everything is like bail and like, paying like $12 for a, little Gatorade. And, it like, I wanted you to have like a balance to see like of like how other people like their idea of like, vacation or experience and, being around. I mean, I know like even just like, right, is it Thursday nights, the luau's alone were like one of your favorite things like every year, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm so glad and I'm so proud of you. Like when you got to actually be an instructor, that's so cool. Just totally pass the torch,
Yep. Well, the two of you are two of, as you know, my favorite people. I've been in your life as long as you could talk, Ethan. And listening to you two, you're both an inspiration to everyone. You should be a proud mom. And Ethan, thank you so much for talking with us again. I know you're about to go start your senior year classes in a little bit. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me again. It's been fun.
You're awesome, dude. I love you.
Love you too, Mom.